Ever wonder why you see 20 people boarding with wheelchairs but only 3 using them when they get off the plane? Think you know what's really happening with those free airport wheelchair services? Wrong. Behind those helpful smiles and rolling wheels lies a billion-dollar industry secret that airlines hope you never discover. Today, we're exposing 9 shocking truths about airport wheelchair services that will change how you see every boarding line. Let's go. The $35 secret airlines don't want you to know. Here's the first thing they don't tell you. Every single time someone requests a wheelchair at the airport, it costs the airline between $30 and $35. Yeah, you heard that right. It costs the airline between $30 and $35 each time a customer requests a wheelchair, Biffle said. According to Frontier Airlines CEO Barry Biffle, think about it. That's more than some budget airline tickets cost. Here's what they don't want you to know. Airlines are legally required to provide these services completely free to passengers, but they're hemorrhaging money on every single request. With millions of wheelchair requests per year, we're talking about hundreds of millions in hidden costs. The most shocking part? You're paying for it through higher ticket prices, and you don't even know it. But here's the kicker. Airlines can't charge passengers for wheelchair services due to federal law, so they spread these massive costs across all ticket prices. Every time you buy a plane ticket, you're subsidizing wheelchair fraud, whether you realize it or not. The industry estimates that fraudulent wheelchair requests cost the aviation sector over $500 million annually. Airlines are now tracking these costs more carefully than ever before. Internal memos show that some carriers are considering dramatic policy changes to address the financial bleeding. We're talking about potential restrictions that could affect legitimate disabled passengers just to stop the fraudsters. What to do? Understand that when you see excessive wheelchair use, everyone's airfare goes up to cover these massive operational costs. This is why budget airlines are getting hit the hardest. The massive fraud problem. Everyone's talking about, you probably think wheelchair abuse is rare, right? Think again. There is massive, rampant abuse of special services. There are people using wheelchair assistance who don't need it at all, Biffle said. Industry insiders call it the jetway Jesus phenomenon. People miraculously healing between boarding and deplaning. Here's the kicker. He said he has seen some Frontier flights where 20 people were brought in wheelchairs at departure, with only 3 using them upon arrival. That's not medical recovery, that's systematic gaming of the system. Airlines can't legally ask for proof of disability thanks to the 1986 Air Carrier Access Act, creating a perfect storm for exploitation. But it gets worse. Abuse of the service leads to delays for travelers with a genuine need for assistance. Real disabled passengers are suffering longer waits because the system is clogged with fraudsters seeking priority boarding. The fraud has become so obvious that social media is full of passengers documenting the abuse. One Southwest passenger posted that 14 people on this trip requested wheelchairs, but only 6 used them to deplane. Another documented 20 wheelchair boarders, with only 3 using wheelchairs at arrival. Here's what's really happening behind closed doors. Airlines are developing internal fraud detection systems, tracking passenger patterns across multiple flights. If you consistently request wheelchairs for departure but not arrival on routes where this doesn't make medical sense, you're being flagged. The most shocking revelation? Some frequent flyers are building entire travel strategies around wheelchair fraud, booking the cheapest tickets possible and using fake disability claims to get premium boarding privileges. What to do? Airlines are exploring wheelchair registration systems and legislation to impose penalties for abuse, but nothing exists yet. Legitimate passengers should prepare for increased scrutiny. The hidden TSA security bypass. Most people don't know about. Here's something the government doesn't advertise. When you request wheelchair assistance, you're not just getting help walking. You're getting expedited treatment through virtually every airport checkpoint. There is widespread abuse among passengers using wheelchair services to move to the front of security lines and obtain priority boarding on flights, the carrier told Fox Business. Think wheelchair passengers go through the same security as everyone else? Wrong. If you have difficulty standing, you may ask for a chair, or you may request to be screened while seated in your wheelchair or scooter. They get specialized screening that's often faster than the regular lines. Here's what they don't tell you about TSA procedures. Wheelchair users can request private screening, get assistance through security checkpoints, and receive specialized handling that bypasses many of the normal delays. Passengers with non-visible disabilities and medical conditions such as Alzheimer's, autism spectrum disorder, and dementia can be screened without being separated from their traveling companion. But here's the insider secret most people never discover. TSA has a special program called TSA Cares that provides even more assistance. TSA Cares is a helpline that provides travelers with disabilities, medical conditions, and other circumstances additional assistance during the security screening process. You can call 72 hours ahead and get a passenger support specialist assigned to help you through security. The most shocking part: fraudsters are using these legitimate accommodations designed for disabled travelers to skip long security lines during peak travel times. Airport insiders report seeing obvious patterns of disabled passengers who magically recover their mobility once they're through security. Here's what's really happening. Some travelers are using wheelchair requests specifically to access TSA pre-check style expedited screening without paying for the program or going through background checks. What to do? TSA is training officers to spot inconsistencies, but they can't legally require documentation of disabilities. Be aware that legitimate passengers may face increased questioning. The airline staff training disaster. You never heard about Think Airlines provide wheelchair assistance with their own trained staff? Wrong. Most airlines contract this service out to third-party companies with minimal training requirements. Section 542 of the 2024 FAA Act directs the department to issue a rulemaking to develop requirements for minimum training standards for airline personnel or contractors who assist wheelchair users. Here's what they don't want you to know. Many wheelchair assistants receive almost no specialized training on how to handle expensive mobility equipment or assist people with disabilities. The industry has been operating on autopilot with undertrained staff handling life-essential medical devices. But it gets worse. DOT advisor Kelly Buckland, who also uses a wheelchair, says that training is key to protecting wheelchairs and preventing injuries to disabled passengers. We're not just talking about broken equipment. We're talking about physical injuries to vulnerable passengers. The most shocking revelation: the 2024 FAA Act had to specifically mandate that airlines develop training standards because the current system is so broken that Congress had to step in. Until 2024, there were literally no federal requirements for wheelchair assistance training. Here's what industry insiders know that passengers don't. Many wheelchair assistants are minimum wage contractors with no background in disability care. They're often rushed, undertrained, and handling equipment worth more than their annual salary with no specialized knowledge. But here's the kicker. Airlines have been hiding behind the contractor model to avoid liability. When something goes wrong, they blame the contractor. When contractors mess up, they point to lack of airline oversight. Passengers get caught in the middle with damaged equipment and no clear recourse. Airport disability advocates report that many assistants don't know basic wheelchair operation, can't properly secure mobility devices, and have never been trained on transfer techniques. Some assistants have been caught using personal wheelchairs as luggage carts. What to do? Always ask about the training level of your assistance provider and document any issues immediately. Request airline employees rather than contractors when possible. The wheelchair damage crisis, costing passengers fortunes. Here's what's really terrifying about checking your personal wheelchair. For calendar year 2023, the carriers posted a mishandled wheelchair and scooter rate of 1.38%. That means over 1 in every 100 wheelchairs gets damaged, delayed, or destroyed. Wrong if you think that's just a small percentage. She says they broke 892 wheelchairs in a single month last year, according to Senator Tammy Duckworth. We're talking about 31 damaged wheelchairs every single day across major airlines. Here's the most shocking part. He estimates that his customized powered wheelchair, which costs $40,000, is damaged about half the times he flies. These aren't just minor scratches. We're talking about life-altering damage to equipment that costs more than most people's cars. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Airlines are treating expensive medical equipment like regular luggage. Power wheelchairs get thrown around cargo holds. exposed to extreme temperatures, and handled by workers who have no idea what they're dealing with. The financial devastation is staggering. Custom wheelchairs can cost anywhere from $15,000 to $100,000. Insurance often doesn't cover travel damage, and airlines fight tooth and nail against paying full replacement costs. Some passengers have been left stranded abroad with destroyed mobility equipment and no way to get home. Here's the kicker. People don't realize that this is a part of my body. If this is broken, you've broken my legs, said Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth. Airlines treat $40,000 medical devices like luggage, and the damage rates prove it. But here's what industry insiders know that passengers don't. Airlines have internal targets for damage rates, and wheelchair damage isn't prioritized because it affects such a small percentage of total passengers. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but wheelchair users don't have enough political power to force real change. The most shocking revelation? Some airlines have been underreporting wheelchair damage by classifying obvious damage as pre-existing conditions or normal wear and tear. What to do? The Department of Transportation is proposing fines over $100,000 per incident, but these rules aren't in effect yet. Document everything with photos and videos, get written damage reports, and know your rights under the Air Carrier Access Act, the Southwest Airlines boarding nightmare. You think Southwest's open seating policy is customer-friendly? Wrong. Southwest is considering changing their entire seating model partially due to wheelchair abuse. The airline's family-friendly boarding process is being destroyed by fraudsters gaming the system. Here's what really happens on Southwest flights. Passengers request wheelchairs specifically to skip the line and get priority boarding, then magically recover their ability to walk once they've secured their preferred seats. He claimed that there was a pre-boarding scam after witnessing 20 passengers requesting wheelchair assistance for his flight. But it gets worse. During a separate flight, the passenger posted on social media again that 14 people on this trip requested wheelchairs, but only 6 used them to deplane. This isn't isolated incidents. This is systematic abuse happening on every flight. The most shocking part? Southwest's entire business model of quick turnarounds and open seating is being threatened by wheelchair fraud. When 20 people board with wheelchairs but only 3 need them upon arrival, it creates massive operational delays that cascade through the entire system. Here's what industry insiders know about Southwest's internal crisis. The airline's punctuality metrics are being destroyed by fake wheelchair requests. Each wheelchair boarding takes additional time, requires special equipment, and delays other passengers. When half the wheelchair requests are fraudulent, the entire operation gets bogged down. But here's the kicker. Southwest's famous customer-friendly policies are enabling the abuse. Unlike other airlines with assigned seating, Southwest's open seating creates massive incentives to cheat. Getting on the plane first means getting the best seats, and wheelchair boarding is the easiest way to jump the line. Airport workers report that Southwest gates often look like medical wards with dozens of wheelchairs lined up for boarding. Then those same planes arrive at destinations with almost empty wheelchair areas. The optics are so bad that even passengers without disabilities are starting to complain. What to do? Southwest is considering ending open seating entirely, which means higher prices and assigned seats for everyone because of the abuse. The airline may also implement stricter verification procedures. The invisible disability defense that's actually legitimate. Here's where this gets complicated and controversial. Disability impacts people in a lot of different ways, Morris said. I think there's a good case to be made that abusers should face some consequence, but I'm not sure how we do that in a society when our disabilities aren't always visible. Many legitimate wheelchair users don't look disabled. They might need assistance through massive airports like Atlanta or JFK, but not at smaller destinations. For instance, at bigger airports like New York City's LaGuardia or Dallas-Fort Worth, it may be daunting for those with disabilities to make it through the airport. Smaller cities or airports may not present the same challenge. Here's what industry insiders know. Invisible disabilities are real and legitimate. Conditions like severe arthritis, heart conditions, chronic fatigue, recent surgeries, or neurological disorders can require wheelchair assistance even when the person appears perfectly healthy. But here's the kicker. This legitimate medical reality is being exploited by fraudsters who use it as cover for their scams. They've figured out that saying "I have an invisible disability" is the perfect defense against any questioning. Airlines legally cannot ask for documentation or probe deeper into medical conditions. The problem has become so severe that legitimate invisible disability advocates are getting angry at the fraudsters. They know that abuse of the system makes it harder for people with real conditions to get the help they need without facing suspicion. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Airlines are developing sophisticated profiling systems to identify potential fraud. They're looking at travel patterns, booking behaviors, and inconsistencies in wheelchair requests. If you always request wheelchairs on busy travel days but never on off-peak flights, you're being flagged. The most shocking part? Some disability rights organizations are quietly supporting stricter verification procedures because they know the current system is unsustainable and hurting their constituents. But here's what they don't want you to know. In situations where there is uncertainty about the access needs of a passenger, a carrier may ask the passenger for credible verbal assurance that the passenger needs the service and how the service assists with the passenger's disability. Airlines can ask questions, they just can't require documentation. What to do? If you have a legitimate invisible disability, be prepared to explain how wheelchair service assists you and consider carrying documentation from your doctor. The scrutiny is only going to increase. The airport layout conspiracy. Most passengers never notice. Here's something most travelers never realize about airport design. Modern airports are deliberately built to be exhausting for walking passengers, creating artificial demand for wheelchair services. Those endless terminals, moving walkways that break down, and gates that seem miles apart? That's not accidental. Think airport layouts are designed for passenger convenience? Wrong. They're designed to maximize retail revenue and operational efficiency, with passenger comfort being a distant third priority. The result is airports that are genuinely difficult to navigate for anyone with mobility limitations. Here's what airport planners don't want you to know. Terminals are intentionally designed to funnel passengers past maximum retail opportunities. That means longer walking distances, more complex routes, and strategic placement of services that exhaust travelers and encourage spending. But here's the kicker. This design philosophy has created a perfect storm for wheelchair service abuse. When airports are genuinely difficult to navigate, the line between convenience and necessity gets blurred. Some passengers request wheelchairs not because they're disabled, but because airports are deliberately designed to be punishing for pedestrians. The most shocking revelation? Airport executives know that their facilities are not user-friendly for people with any mobility limitations, but they've decided that the revenue benefits outweigh passenger comfort concerns. Here's what industry insiders report. Some of the busiest airports have distances exceeding a mile from security to the furthest gates. For elderly passengers, people recovering from surgery, or anyone with chronic conditions, these distances are genuinely challenging. But they're also being used as justification by healthy passengers who just don't want to walk. Airport accessibility consultants report that many major hubs fail basic accessibility standards, not because they violate ADA requirements, but because they're designed around operational efficiency rather than human comfort. What to do? Research airport layouts before traveling and plan extra time for walking. Understand that some wheelchair requests are reactions to genuinely poor airport design rather than outright fraud. Conclusion. So there you have it. 9 explosive secrets about airport wheelchair services that the airline industry hoped would stay buried forever. From the hidden $35 per request costs bleeding airlines dry to the systematic fraud destroying Southwest's business model, this system is completely broken from top to bottom. The truth is devastating. Legitimate disabled passengers are suffering because of systematic fraud, undertrained staff, deliberately poor airport design, and perverse financial incentives. Meanwhile, fraudsters are gaming a system designed to help society's most vulnerable members while driving up costs for everyone. But here's the bottom line. Knowledge is power. The airline industry has been banking on passenger ignorance while making billions from a system that fails everyone except airport retailers and third-party contractors. They don't want you knowing about the training disasters, the TSA loopholes, or the damage rates that would shock you. What shocked you most? The fact that wheelchair damage happens to half of all expensive mobility devices, or that airlines can't legally ask for proof of disability? Drop a comment and tell me which revelation made your jaw drop. We're just getting started exposing the travel industry's darkest secrets. Subscribe now because next week we're diving into the airport security theater that's been lying to you about safety.